Putin has no intention of stopping this war. On the contrary, he's preparing to throw even more Russian citizens into the fire. Information that began as warnings from Russian opposition sources and independent researchers has now hardened into something far more concrete. A new mass mobilization is on the horizon, and it could dwarf anything Russia has attempted since the chaotic call-up of September 2022. For months, estimates of the coming wave have varied. In late July, President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian intelligence believed Moscow was preparing to draft somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 additional troops once the political calendar cleared. But by August 11th, the picture sharpened considerably. Zelensky revealed that Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, the HUR, had obtained internal Russian documents confirming the plan directly from Moscow's own paperwork. This was no longer a matter of speculation from exiled journalists or independent researchers. It was, in Zelensky's words, confirmed by Russia's own internal records. According to that intelligence, the Kremlin intends to wait until immediately after Russia's parliamentary elections, scheduled for September 20th, before launching what Ukrainian officials describe as a rapid additional mobilization of several 100,000 Russians before the end of 2026. And the plan does not stop there. Ukrainian intelligence says Moscow intends to mobilize a comparable number again over the course of 2027. All of this would come on top of the ongoing contract recruitment system Russia has relied on for the past 2 years to avoid the political fallout of another open draft. Zelensky framed the timing as deliberate. Russia's Supreme Court has already barred Yabloko, the only registered party still opposing the war, from contesting the vote, leaving an election Zelensky bluntly called an imitation. The strategy, as Ukrainian officials read it, is simple. Hold a tightly controlled vote, present the result as proof the Russian public still backs the war, and use that manufactured mandate as political cover to order a mobilization the Kremlin has spent more than 3 years trying to avoid announcing outright. While that timeline exists on paper, the execution on the ground has already begun, months ahead of schedule. Since June, reports and video evidence have emerged from cities including Penza, Ulyanovsk, and Rostov, describing men being pulled off the street, stopped at checkpoints, and taken from workplaces by police and military enlistment officers working together. In Penza, residents described masked men and traffic police checking documents door to door, initially targeting those who had ignored past summonses before broadening into stops of any military-aged man in the area. In Ulyanovsk, a man who had already lost an eye said he was pressured into signing a contract regardless. In Rostov, police reportedly detained 35 factory workers in a single sweep. Russian authorities have publicly denied that any of this amounts to forced conscription, with Penza police going so far as to threaten legal consequences for anyone who shares what they call fake reports about the raids. Videos and testimony from residents and independent Russian outlets tell a different story. The reason for the urgency is not hard to find. Russia's central bank governor, Elvira Nabiullina, has openly warned that the country is facing the worst labor shortage in its modern history. A shortage driven directly by 3.5 years of battlefield losses, mass emigration, and hundreds of thousands of men pulled out of the civilian economy and into uniform. Voluntary contract recruitment, the system the Kremlin has used since 2022 specifically to avoid another unpopular draft, has been declining through 2026, falling well short of the numbers Russia's military says it needs to sustain operations and offset its losses at the front. That combination has created an unusual dynamic inside Russia itself. The people most anxious about a new mobilization are not necessarily who you'd expect. It isn't only families in Moscow or St. Petersburg bracing for their sons to be called up, since the capital has historically been shielded from the heaviest burden of conscription. It is Russia's business owners and regional governors who now find themselves caught in the middle. Company leaders across the country are already struggling to fill positions in a labor market Nabialina describes as unprecedented, and a fresh wave of several 100,000 men pulled from factories, farms, and offices would deepen that shortage sharply. Regional governors, meanwhile, have historically been handed mobilization quotas from Moscow with little say in how they are filled, and it is their provinces, especially poorer regions and ethnic republics far from the capital, that have absorbed the heaviest losses in every previous wave. Some governors are already moving to shield their local economies, expanding emergency administrative powers in anticipation of martial law, while simultaneously scrambling to bring in labor migrants to replace workers they expect to lose to the draft. For ordinary Russians, particularly men of fighting age outside the country's major cities, anxiety has already spread well ahead of any official announcement. Search interest in mobilization-related terms spiked sharply through the summer, and surveys have shown a steady rise in the share of Russians reporting anxiety about a new call-up, even before the Kremlin has confirmed anything publicly. Officially, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has declined to directly address Zelensky's claims, saying only that Ukraine's president has no business discussing Russia's internal plans. Other Russian officials have dismissed the reports outright as pre-election propaganda. But the documents Ukrainian intelligence says it has obtained, combined with raids already unfolding in city after city, suggests the question is no longer whether Moscow moves toward a broader mobilization. It's simply a question of how soon, and how many more Russian citizens will be pulled into a war that shows no sign of ending on its own.